Hello, and that's tough to see, but
Yeah, we're gonna have to rock the sunglasses.
Men in Black style. Oh, people starting to file in. For those on, we're a little bit early. We're trying to get things settled in. As you can see, we're Men in Black style. We are looking directly into the sun from our press box, so we're just going to have to rock the shades during the show. But we're a little bit early. We'll let kind of people start trickling in, and in about a minute or so, we'll get things rocking. Yes, Taylor, I thank you for letting me know that we are on.
Hope you guys had fun at the garage sale while we were busy eating Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
Which the concession stand sells Chick-fil-A. Yeah, for real.
Oh gosh, that's dangerous. What's this video board? I'm playing video. You got videos going
What's
here.
up, Marcus? My man. What's up, buddy?
Videos going on the video board.
Guys, this stadium is just tremendous. We will not do it justice here when we get started. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but it is.
At the end of the show, I will turn the camera around and just kind of give you a look at this, but it is, it's pretty impressive here. So,
And we won't be able to show you the press box, obviously, and it's as impressive as anything else.
Mm-hmm. About 1 minute away, we'll get things going here. All 16 coaches up for Helias out there now, it looks like.
Yeah, 16. They literally have as many coaches on the field right now as they do players.
No doubt. Trying to get a number on who their starting quarterback is. I bet it's this guy over here on the...
Weaver, number 2.
Yep, I bet he's right over here.
Yeah, I think you're right.
No, that's
No.
number 10.
He looks like an athlete, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm. I don't see a number 2. All right.
What's up, Ernst?
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like there's just only about 8 on here, but with the travel to Helias, that's probably understandable. But we'll get started. Again, interactive experience. If you want to hop in and ask a question or whatnot, we'll try to get to it. We do got some things we're going to talk about. We'll talk about Monroe City-Helias. We'll talk about the softball team. We're going to briefly talk about the football, Mizzou football, and then at the end of the show, we will do the Monroe City all-lab defense. We did the offense last week. We'll do the defense this week. So, in talking about the game tonight against Helias, again, Helias, a perennial Class 4 power. They're 3-3 this year, coming off back-to-back wins. Play a very tough schedule. A lot of the big private schools they play, and they are a very good team. Last week they played Father Tolton and pretty well dominate the entire game, rack up about 300 to 400 yards of offense on the ground, 330 on the ground. And one of the things they got back last week is they got a running back that hadn't played all year. He's coming off I believe a shoulder injury, and he ran for over 200 yards last week against Father Tolton. Very talented team. They got 5 senior starters on the offensive line. And it's going to be a chore for Monroe City. Monroe City last week, offensively, they were pretty impressive. 460 yards, give or take, of offense. They ran the ball well, over 300 yards, maybe even over 400 yards on the ground.
Yeah, over 400.
They get Batzel with 173 yards and 4 touchdowns. You have a big night from Zach Osborne, Blake Hayes, both at 90 or 100 yards. They're going to need to play their best, their most complete game. And the worry, I think, for Monroe City tonight is last week against South Shelby, they had Brock Wood, the explosive player, and the ability for him to get outside and get big yards. Against Helias, Helias is going to be more spread out than South, but they're going to run a lot of option. They're going to try to get their running backs outside, and Monroe City is going to have to do a much better job than they did last week in stopping that to stay in the game.
Yeah, so Helias is going to run a spread offense, a true spread. Coach Hinches has run the spread since he started coaching. He's got over 50 wins here at Helias. He's come back after a little hiatus to watch his son play linebacker or play tight end for Alabama. But with that being said, they're a spread team. But according to the statistics and according to the podcast that both Michael and I listened for the Helias' broadcast team, they really want to be 70-30 run pass. They have a sophomore quarterback who came in versus Hannibal and was hurt, and now is the starter. The original starter was hurt and now has taken over. And they want to protect him. They had not run the spread here previously, as Coach Hinches was on his hiatus from Helias. So now he's bringing the spread back. They're really wanting to protect their sophomore quarterback. And so you're going to see a running game. And yes, Monroe is going to have to do. Now, the fourth quarter against Monroe, Coach Idris brought his outside linebackers up. We went to a six-man front. Not going to be able to do that at all. That adjustment won't work against Helias because they're going to have four receivers at all times. So it'll be interesting to see the adjustments that Coach Idris, the defensive coordinator, made. But yes, we're going to have to play as complete a ball game as we've played in some time tonight. This is a Class 4 school, as you mentioned, a perennial. Coach Hinch led them to the Class 2 runners-up in 2008, 2009, back-to-back years, 50-plus wins already. So it's going to be a matchup. But in talking to Coach Kirby, our coaching staff and our players are really looking at this as an opportunity to kind of see where we're at.
Yeah, we send some questions weekly to Coach Kirby, and he was pretty excited to come up and just kind of, this is a feeling out point for Monroe City to see where they are. They had the loss to Macon, who Macon is going to be the most similar team that we will see on the schedule to Helias, at least until a playoff berth or a playoff matchup. But, I think the last 2 weeks, West Hancock and South Shelby, teams that we probably should have won. South Shelby, I don't think we played our best game. I think South Shelby played the best they possibly could have. But this is a whole different animal. This is not, West Hancock and South Shelby, we were, physically we overmatched them. We were bigger up front. We were bigger at linebacker, all these other things. That's not going to happen tonight. Again, Helias comes 5 senior linemen. And, this is a team that beat Hannibal week 1, perennial Class 4 power with a coach that has shown that he can win coming back. And it's a legacy here. The football field is named after his dad, Ray, who won, I believe, 5 state championships at Helias, in the 70s and 80s. So it is a legacy here at Helias. I think, there's a little bit of excitement here. Last year, they brought a coach that it was more run-oriented. They ran a little bit of a variation of the wing T. And, this is just, the spread and getting, the coach back. I think there's a lot of excitement and a lot of looking to the future for Helias. And I think they've gotten better as the years went on.
And Monroe fans who wonder, why are we playing a Class 4 school? Well, I can tell you, if we want to get where we want and where we've been the last 2 years, which is making that deep run in the playoffs and obviously the state championship last year, you're going to have to beat teams in the playoffs that are better than Helias. Blair Oaks, by all indications, is the best team in this area, maybe not to the Jays level. And then you've got Lutheran North, who's full of Division I athletes. And then, of course, you've got Lamar looming if we're able to make that deep run. All 3 of those teams are as good or better than what this Helias football team is going to be. So as Coach Kirby was mentioning to us, it just gives us that gauge to see where we're at going into the crunch time of the year. 2 huge conference games coming up for Monroe City in the next 2 weeks. And then, depending on where we're seated, that Week 10 game, probably a opponent we've seen before and have probably beaten. And then, then you're facing Clark or Palmyra or back-to-back again. So, the game came about. I can tell all fans that there will be a lot more people screaming in Monroe City if we had a bye week than us playing a Class 4 school. And that's just the truth of the matter. The kids work too hard and the coaches work too hard and put too much effort into this game to have a bye week. It's much better to play up than it is to have a bye. And certainly that's my opinion. I firmly believe that we are just fine playing this team, and there's no reason why we can't come up here and compete or come down here and compete. And it's just an interesting matchup. I mean, it's the first time. There's very few times that we can say this is the first time something's ever happened, and for both these schools. And Coach Hinch has also mentioned, and we'll move on here in a second, but this is the first time he's ever seen a Wing T team since he's been coach. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk more about that in the pregame on the radio, but that provides an interesting dynamic too.
Yep. And again, just a reminder, we will be on the radio again, 6:40 pregame, 7 o'clock kickoff. We'll talk a lot about the game during the pregame there. So just kind of moving along, let's talk about the softball team. As many of you know, we were lucky enough to call the game Tuesday night against Macon. They won that game at least 7-2 was the final, and that took them to 15-3. That gave them a clinch of the title. They share the conference title with Highland, the first time since 2000 that they've had a share of the title. Additionally, the next day on Wednesday, we find out that they end up being the 2 seed in the Palmyra district for softball, Highland being the number 1, Monroe City being the number 2. They play that first district game a week from yesterday. They play it on Thursday. They will probably play Palmyra. Palmyra plays South Shelby in a play-in game. Looks like to get to a district championship, you're going to have to run through Palmyra and run through a Highland team that, I think Monroe City, is wanting another chance at. I don't think they played their best game against Highland on that. I believe they played Monday night against Highland. So, exciting times for the softball team. They looked very good on Tuesday. They got a game Monday, I believe, against Salisbury, and then they get into districts, and just an exciting year for the softball team.
Yeah, and a few things. The 15-3 record obviously is awesome, but they probably lost 3 wins because the Monroe City tournament we had the hurricane that came up through the Midwest, the tropical storm, Gordon, that came up through Missouri. And so they were the favorites to win that. So we'll just assume we would have won. That's 18-3 all of a sudden. And then, and I want to encourage all of you to go to Palmyra. It's a cool atmosphere to watch a softball game. And obviously we're going to be probably playing our rivals. I'm going to be in Oklahoma for work, so can't make it next week. But highly encourage all of you that can, go out on Thursday, support the girls. Like Michael said, Tuesday was an absolute blast, and shout out to Rachel Smith for hitting the ball right at us. I think we've had some comic relief. Very sunny here, Kitty.
We're looking straight dead into the sun.
Yeah, it couldn't be any more dead in our eyes. But yeah, Rachel, I think we've had some comic relief for people that have watched our Facebook Live after we posted it with Rachel hitting the ball right at us. Was just a great game. We hit the ball well. Mac settled in, really tight strike zone that night from the umpire.
And she struggled a little bit in the second inning with that strike zone. 4 or 5 pitches, borderline pitches all go against her. She walks a couple. They have probably the flukiest sack bunt you'll ever see. Yeah. A bunt that is hit 100 miles an hour right by the pitcher and scores a run, and then they get another run there. But after that, she settled in. I think she had 9 strikeouts. From the end of the second quarter on, she was dynamite. The offense came alive. Riley Quinn getting the big hit in the third inning to tie it, and then after that, tacking on runs. I know. Fifth or sixth inning, they had double, and then the fourth hit was one that Rachel Smith hit off us that she gets thrown out at second. Very easily could have been 4 straight doubles. I've said it every time we've talked about them. This is the most complete team I can remember Monroe, at least going back to that 2000, if not farther back.
OB's listed. I think she was safe at second too, Michael.
She was, but
it is what it is, I guess.
So, again, very complete, extremely good defense. You got probably the best defensive catcher, probably the best defensive shortstop, probably the best defensive second baseman. Bailey Hayes is right up there at third, and your outfield is all athletic, very good. So, I think this is a team that's got a lot of capabilities of making a run. And you get out of this district, you get out of the Northeast Missouri pod, and you're going to make a run at state. Just softball in our area is very, very good. As you've seen, Canton has made runs, Bowling Green, Palmyra, Centralia, and Monroe City has the ability this year to kind of run right with that. So,
good luck to our Lady Panthers next week. Sorry I can't be there. I'll be, like I said, in Oklahoma. I will not be here for the broadcast next week or Facebook Live. So again, thanks to Jeremy Moss for filling in, and looking forward to. I think my plane lands at like 8, so I'll maybe catch the second half on the radio next week. So good luck, Lady Panthers.
Again, Thursday, district start Thursday, and it looks like it should be against Palmyra. So kind of moving along, we won't talk a whole lot about Mizzou football. Mizzou off last week. Again, 107.5 The Lake, our radio home. Also the home of the Missouri Tiger football broadcast. Tigers 3-1. Game against South Carolina. Kind of a budding little rivalry since we've been in the SEC. Both teams being in the SEC East. Kind of a battle of the Columbias. Columbia, Missouri. Columbia, South Carolina. Jerry saying that Canton did win 1A state last year, and we beat them 3 times, and we beat them twice this year. So, just shows how good this area is. But looking at this Missouri game, playing South Carolina, a team that mirrors Mizzou a lot. Offensively, led by a quarterback, which Jake Bentley, their star quarterback, I believe he's definitely not going to start.
Right.
He may, questionable on whether he'll make an appearance. They're going to start a redshirt senior, I believe, at quarterback. But with him healthy, they kind of had the Missouri's Drew Lock, Emmanuel Hall. Everything kind of revolves around them offensively. The same thing for South Carolina with Bentley and Debo Samuel, who battled injuries last year. But against Missouri, he was dynamite, and he's one of the most electric players in college football. Now, the thing for South Carolina this year is they have not shown the ability to run the football at all. In Missouri, they have a bad pass defense, but a top 20 rushing defense in the country. And if they can take that away, maybe that gives them a shot to take some, to put some pressure on the quarterback, get some takeaways, and get something going defensively. I think offensively, if our running game is as good as it was against Georgia, I think we should be okay. It's just we got to establish that running game with Roundtree and Crockett and Beatty, and I think that's a big key for the game on Saturday. Again, tomorrow at 11 a.m. kickoff, probably 10:30 pregame. I'm not sure what time they're going to start the pregame.
Yeah, and what worries me about Bentley not starting, it takes me back a few years ago when we played South Carolina and Connor Shaw did not start because he was injured, and then he came in because their backup quarterback was terrible. And he absolutely destroyed the Mizzou Tigers.
14 point, 2 back-to-back touchdowns, drives in the fourth quarter.
I still have nightmares about that game. So, again, that's on 107.5. Mike Kelly will be on the call. And so we'll be taking that in. And, Mizzou's the better team. And Mindy, sorry, you just missed. We just talked about the softball, so make sure you go back and take in the softball talk here when we get done. But we're the better team going in that game. Mizzou is, I think, truly the better team. It's an SEC road game. It's tough to win on the road. It's an 11 o'clock kickoff, noon out there. It's like 90 there right now. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be hot. And so it's an interesting matchup, but if we want to be the program that, Barry Odom wants them to be, you got to win these games.
Yep.
So
with that, especially with next week, Alabama coming up.
You're just not going to win that game.
All right, so let's go to the user, I guess what we'll call the user portion of the broadcast first. And again, for those that are joining us, seeing us in the Men in Black sunglass look, the sun is directly we're looking directly at the sun that there's no way we can do it without the sunglasses. So we apologize for that. Our weekly message from the mayor of Huntington this week. He did a couple rules, and now he is, after seeing how bad the media was at the rankings, he has done his own mayor of Huntington power rankings for Class 2. And here is his rankings for Class 2 this week. Number 1, Lamar, 6-0, no-brainer, unanimous, longest winning streak in the country of any class, any size school. They're number 1. Number 2, Lutheran North, 3-3. And that 3-3 team, that's a deceiving record. They are very, very good. Have played in Ohio, Illinois. They travel and they play.
It's like this game where they can't get anybody to play them because they're so good. Monroe couldn't get anybody to play us this week, so that's what they face scheduling wise.
Yeah. So sorry, Griff. Nothing we can do about it. I'm sure we do look like ghosts. I see where you're coming from there. So. Number 3, Blair Oak, 6-0. Number 4, Lathrop out west, 6-0. Number 5, Palmyra, 6-0. Number 6, Clark County, 5-1. And that is the game of the week in our area is Clark County, Palmyra at Clark County. Be very interested in, if anybody has scores throughout the game, if you have Ryan's number, send them to Ryan. I can't look at my phone, but we do want updates, on any game, but especially that Palmyra Clark County game. So Clark County 6, number 7 Lawson again out west, number 8 Monroe at 5-1, number 9 North Callaway at 6-0, and number 10 Fairgrove at 6-0. So again, like I said, the big game in the CCC is Clark Palmyra. Those are our next 2 games. That's how the district is going to play out. We're going to play them again in districts. So Chris says a cousin of me and Ryan, Mike McCurran, was a graduate of Helias, and he believes he holds the record in the 100-yard dash at 9.9. So
thank you, Knoxville.
Little Monroe City connection here to Helias. So now to kind of what the big talk, we talked about the offense last week. The biggest conversation starter since we started the Facebook Live has been the all-lab team. So, we'll talk about that. Last week, if you want to go back, last week we did the offense. I did, go through, and I was able to find a list of every All-Stater that's played at Monroe City. They had a website I found had All-Staters going back to like 1955. So, a couple of them that maybe didn't get mentioned that were All-Staters. Randy Frankenbach was a first-team All-State offensive line that wasn't mentioned. Should have been on the list.
Sorry, Randy.
Eric Johnson was, one of the first All-Staters in Monroe's in the lab area. Him and Mike Smith were the first 2 All-Staters in 1987, I believe, is when they were All-State. So they were the first 2 of the All-State players for lab, and then from that point on, we had a whole bunch, and we'll mention a lot of them in the defense. We mentioned a lot of them last week. So,
and I did mention Joey Chitwood last week. He was a lineman on that 94, but I called him Nathan. Sorry, Joey. He was an All-Stater. Mike was mentioning, and I mentioned him. I meant to mention him anyway. But shout out to Joey. He was a stud lineman.
All right, so we got to do second.
And then Monzel Sharp. Monzel played at the beginning of Lab's era. So
and Trent Garner was another one that at running back that we probably should have mentioned. So I'll just go through before we get to the defense. I do have a list of every offensive All-Stater in the Lab area. I thought it'd be interesting to say. Eric Johnson at a lineman. Michael Washington, 2 years at running back. Randy Frankenbach, I just mentioned. Justin Ritter was an offensive lineman. Chris Kleinenson, offensive line. Danny Holliday in 1993, first-team All-State running back. Jamar White, Joey Chitwood, Brian Hummert, all on that 94 team. Richard Comstock, Joe Quinn, 96. Ryan, 97. Seth Studer, Nick Forrest in 98. Matt Paris was actually a 2-time All-Stater, once as a running back, once as a receiver. Matt Harris, 2 times All-State on the offensive line, and Jared Dixon. We mentioned a lot of those guys last week. So that is the All-Staters on the offensive side. And now let's go ahead and get into our all-lab defense.
Yeah, so again, we're kind of revealing it a little bit. I'm not going to lie, we cheated on the way here because we had a long drive, and we had a couple ex-Panthers with us, Jerry Quinn, one of our great sponsors. and also Scotty Williams, our uncle and quarterback. They were in those great lab teams in the late 80s. So we did kind of reveal our teams already to each other, but so we'll start with. So I'm running a 4-4. Michael's going to run a 5-3. Coach Plurd called the defense in our era. I know Coach Pratt called it in some eras. And so that we've run everything. We run a 6-band. They read it all. They were great at defensive game planning. And, you know, and while we're at it, real quick, shout out to those coaches. We talked about them when we first introduced this team and said we were going to do it. We talked about their influence that they had on our lives. But just we couldn't have grown up, and the coaching staff we have now is the same exact way. They do right by kids. They take care of kids. So shout out to our coaches, Coach Lab, of course, the patriarch of Monroe City football, and you know all he did. Coach Plurd, offensive line coach, defensive coordinator, Coach Pratt,
special teams, Mike
coordinator,
Prager,
Prager,
also
Paul
did some
Frigo.
special teams. Paul Frigo was there when I was there.
So yeah, Trent Garner helped too, and those guys that were kind of in the peripheral. So shout out to them before, but we'll jump into it now.
So I'll let Ryan start with his defensive front.
So we're going to start in the 4-4 for me. So I've got 4 down linemen, 2 D tackles, 2 D ends. So my first team defensive tackles are Ronnie Ogle and Kevin Braxton. Backing them up are my man Brad Ritter and Kevin Utterback, a late 80s. So I've got a couple 80s guys in there, a couple 90s. So I go Ronnie Ogle, Kevin Roy, Kevin Braxton, and then we'll go Brad Ritter, Kevin Utterback to back them up, D tackles.
Okay, so I'm going to 5-3, and I'm just playing with kind of what I got. I have my 3 interior linemen, a Derek Crow, a 2-time All-Stater.
Good.
Keith Painter, again, another 2-time All-Stater. He played with me, and Kevin Braxton. And again, you know, Kenny, we see that. A lot of great players in the 70s and early 80s. We're just talking about the lab area. I'm sure at another time we'll start talking about some of those other things, you know, some of the other greats in history for Monroe. And then my backups on the defensive tackle, Kevin Utterback and Brad Ritter, like Ryan mentioned, and Steve Smith, a player in the early 90s who was a first-team All-State defensive tackle. So those are my interior guys. So
go ahead and do your edge guys.
So the edge guys, I have starting on the edge. I'm going to have Joey Geist on one end, and I'm going to have Alan Quinn on the other end. Both from the 93-94 team. You know, both All-State, both very good. But, you know, I could go into my next 3 defensive ends, and they're all going to be very, very good. Leo Smith, Tony DeGrave, who I think had like 18 sacks his senior year, and then Chris Robinson, who was the opposite side of that, only played, I think, a year of high school football.
2 years.
Great basketball player, and just a threat coming off the edge, very fast, very tall, lanky. So that's my defensive line.
So, you know, we did, obviously, each of us, we didn't do this together. We took some liberties on where we would put people and made it fit. So my DNs are starting. I was an 8th grader when this dude was a senior, and he would paint his face, and he would taunt, for lack of a better word, back when you could, put his arms up. I mean, he scared the hell out of me. And I was an 8th grader. Thank God I wasn't running the scout team offense. But Joey Geist, probably for me, behind Aaron Crow as the best defensive players, and Andre White, who we'll get to. So Joey, and then I've got Alan Quinn, who was a defensive end when I ran scout team offense, and it sucked because I went against Kevin Roy and Aaron and Allen and Andy Buckman. And, I mean, the list goes on and on. It sucked. But I got them 2 starting, and then I got my man, one of my best friends in the world, coached with him, loved every minute of it. Tony DeGrave was a stud in 1996. I moved Keith Painter to the edge as an edge guy.
That's what he was. I mean, he played in most of the time for us. I just needed somebody for defensive tackle, and I wanted him to be on the first team. So we'll just talk about linebackers as a group. He has 4, I have 3, and I'll go first. And you know, my linebackers are Crow, and Paris to start off. Aaron, Adam, and Matt Paris on my first team. I mean, Aaron is kind of the we've talked about, I believe, in an earlier podcast, if there's an MVP of Monroe City football, it has to be Aaron Crow. Great running back. I believe he's the Gatorade Player of the Year his senior year in '94 when they won state. Went on to go to Northwest and was a multiple-time All-American linebacker at Northwest. I mean, he's the greatest in my opinion. Maybe not the best athletic. Michael Washington would be in there, but as an overall MVP for the program, it would be Aaron Crow. So I have Aaron Crow, Adam Crow, and Matt Paris, and then backing them up, I have Ronnie Ogle. He had as a tackle.
He played both.
But he played linebacker. He actually was All-State as a linebacker. And I have Richard Comstock, Blake Paris. And then I have Matt Seward also as a kind of a second, third team guy. And then Buddy Camp, the 2005 team, was an All-Stater. And if you're an All-Stater, I'm at least going to mention you on the broadcast. So Buddy would be there as well. But, Crow, Paris to start, and then Paris, Comstock, and Ronnie Ogle, Matt Seward.
So I did 4 linebackers. So I had a first team inside linebacker, 2 of them, and a second team, and then 2 outside linebackers. And I actually ended up with 3. I must have just quit doing all outside linebackers. There's many more. But so inside linebackers, I'm starting the Crows. I mean, we're dominating that football game with Adam and Aaron there. Adam also went on to play at Northwest Missouri. And Michael mentioned all of Aaron's accolades. He is the MVP. I don't think there's any arguing that. So then I put the Paris boys right there backing them up. I put Matt, of course, All-Stater. His cousin Blake played on your teams and my brother's teams. I thought he made a whole bunch of tackles and was all over the place and was really got after it. So then at outside linebacker, Richard Comstock played middle backer for us, but for trying to spread the love, Richard is definitely deserving. And when I was a kid watching Monroe City football, Jerry Quinn's name was said over that loudspeaker, it would seem like 25 times a game. So I moved him to outside linebacker, and this is where I put Chris Robertson as well. Chris was a stud. He played on that 94 state championship and then the 95 quarterfinal team. So let's move into defensive backs. So we've got it broken down. I've got it broken down into free safeties and then corners. So I'll do my free safeties first. A guy that I loved watching as a kid and that was one of the hardest hitters that I can remember through all the years, and that's Tommy Jackson. And of course, Tommy's no longer with us, but Tommy was phenomenal to watch. I've got Jason Chen backing him up. And then an honorable mention, because I've heard so many people since we've been doing this talk about how hard of a hitter Mike Smith was. And so the thing I remember is Mike Smith was he was quarterback. If he threw an interception, whoever intercepted the ball, he was destroying them. And so that carries over to free safety. So that's my free safety.
So free safety, I had Tommy as well. I had Mike Smith backing him up. And then I have Drew Quinn, kind of the third team guy. Drew Quinn has to be close. It doesn't have the Monroe City record for interceptions in a season.
Yeah.
Also a great basketball player, was All-State in football and basketball. So those are my 3 safeties. So on the corners, I started out with Lamont and Andre White. I mean, Lamont was a 2-time All-Stater. Certainly could have been on offense. Back then, you could only be All-State in one way, either the offense or defense. Lamont actually made it both times as a defensive back. And then Andre, obviously All-Stater, and then goes on to play at Missouri. Was a 2 or 3 year starter at Missouri.
Chris Robinson played 2 years, Griff.
And then backing them up, I had Jamar White, coach at Monroe now. He was obviously pretty good. I have Derek Minner, played with me, very good athlete. Went on to play receiver at Culver and was very good there. And then I have Dwayne White and Jason Chen kind of there as well. Both are All-Staters. Chen had the All-State speed level. Dwayne White also very, very fast. Believe he won state. He was an All-Stater in '95, I believe.
Yeah, he would have been his senior year. So cornerbacks starting, I've got Lamont White, my man. I talked about him last week. Actually was texting with him today. He's coaching in North Kansas City. So shout out to Lamont. Good luck to his team tonight. And we have Andre White, who, it just was a stud defensive player. I've got Dwayne White, we call him Moby. We got him backing him up. And I've got Chad Holliday, who, played a lot of positions back in those days. But I've also got a couple defensive back honorable mentions. My guy here to my left was a very underrated cornerback, and not a lot of people threw at him, if any. He always defended the best wide receiver on the best team, and I always liked watching Michael and Tyler Buckman because they were very fundamentally sound cornerbacks. Their back pedals were crisp. They come out of their breaks. Maybe not the fastest guys, and I'm speaking for myself too because I wasn't very fast either, but their fundamentals were great. So I really love watching them play cornerback. And then I've heard this from multiple people. Brent Holland would have been in the very early years of lab. Many people have told me that he was the hardest hitter that came out of Monroe City. And this was, Trent Garner told me this, Ed Talton. These are guys that have seen a lot of Monroe City football. So that's our defense. Again, this is for fun. We don't mean to offend anybody. We don't mean to leave anybody out. But we've had fun with it. And maybe we come back in a week or two and maybe we put it all together and give you just 22 players. And that's it.
Yeah.
We'll think about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about something in Palmyra. So, and just briefly, we did have a kicker and punter. We're running out of time. Punter, Matt Powell was the first state punter when I played. I think he's the only one there. I'm sure there's some other ones, but, All-Stater, he gets the nod. And then kicker, Jerry Quinn would be our first team kicker. And then right there, Mike Fulton would be right there as well. So those are two great kickers in the mid to late 80s that deserve some love. So we are getting ready to go on the air. Again, we'll be on the air in about 7 minutes, it looks like, for the pregame. Thank you all for joining us. Next week with Jeremy Moss, we may have a special guest. We're waiting to confirm. I will certainly get that out there once we do, but I think it would be something that you guys would be very interested in if we do it. So again, thank you for joining us, and 6 minutes from now we'll be on the air. Thank you guys.
107.5 The Lake. Thanks, guys.